Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I hope you can hear me, and I'm going to share the screen and trust that it will work. Can you see the screen? Okay, very good. I trust you can see my slides, and I do want to thank IICA, especially Dr. Lloyd Day, and a colleague from Syngenta, giving me this opportunity to talk to you. I really appreciate it. I want to begin by indicating what we call Anthropocene. And Anthropocene is defined as an era in which the human impact on Earth's geology and ecosystems began, including but not limited to the climate change. So it's an era, some people think it started with the beginning of agriculture about 10,000 years ago. And Dr. Paul Crutzen, a Nobel laureate from Germany, he believes that it started with 1750, circa when the Industrial Revolution began. But the Anthropocene is an unofficial geologic time era in which the human impact on Earth is as big as any geological force. And we are at present within that anthropogenic era. And one of the impact that is very important that has happened since 1960s is the Green Revolution. During this Green Revolution, for example, from 1961 to 2019, the global population increased 3.1 billion to 7.7 billion by a factor of 2.5. The global cereal production increased by a factor of 3.3, from 880 million tons to 2.9 billion tons by a factor of 3.3. Therefore, the per capita cereal production globally increased by 32%, from 284 kilogram to 376 kilogram per person per year. And this was what we call the Borlaug effect. Dr. Borlaug, the only agriculturist Nobel laureate who designed, worked, implemented the so-called Green Revolution technology. So we should really salute him for his contribution to humanity that saved hundreds of millions of people from starvation. But this Green Revolution also was based on inputs in addition to the improved varieties. For example, the nitrogen fertilizer increased 9.2 times between 1961 and 2019. Total fertilizer use at the moment in 2020 is about 200 million tons. In 1960, it was less than 10 million ton total fertilizer. Phosphorus fertilizer went up 5 times. Potassium fertilizer also went up 5 times. There was a strong increase in the use of pesticides. In the 1960s, there were very little pesticide used, and now, of course, there are very drastic increase in pesticide use. We had also increase in irrigation from 140 million hectare in 1961 to 350 million hectare at the moment, with 70% of the total water withdrawal used for irrigation agriculture. The pesticide used has, as I mentioned, very drastic, 0.65 gram of pesticide per kilogram of grain produced globally. Insecticide, herbicide, fungicide, bactericide, there has been a tremendous increase in the use of insecticide per hectare, 0.22 kilogram of insecticide, 0.7 kilogram per hectare of herbicide and fungicides, 0.3 kilogram per hectare of bactericides. So tremendous input of pesticides. We also have degradation of land. About 3.5 billion hectare of ice-free land area is degraded, which is about 24% of the total territory. Many recent estimates indicate 30% of the total territory, ice-free land, is subject to degradation by erosion, almost billion hectare by water erosion, 0.6 billion hectare by wind erosion, almost 1 billion hectare by salinization and elemental imbalance. So there was a tremendous impact of agricultural assessment, achievement, accomplishment on the environment. The environmental footprint so far has been very high. And in spite of the increase of the productivity, there are still many people who are feed insecure throughout the world. Globally, at the moment, about 800 million people food insecure, and by 2030, the trend is going to increase. Even in 2020, because of the COVID-19, there is an additional 80 to 130 million people who are affected by food insecurity because of the COVID-19. And this trend is especially serious in Africa, although in South Asia, there is a tendency of decreasing the incidence of food insecurity. So while there has been increase in production, causing pollution of the environment, carbon footprint, global warming, soil degradation, and resource depletion, the food security situation still is not addressed and may get even worse. So if we summarize then what happened to agriculture, 40% of the Earth's terrestrial surface is used for agriculture. 77% of agricultural land is allocated to raising animals. 70% of global freshwater withdrawal is used for irrigation. 30 to 35% of the global greenhouse gas emissions are contributed by agriculture. Yet, 1 in 9 person is food insecure. And the percent of these people who are food insecure is going to increase because of the COVID-19. I mentioned another 80 to 130 million people by the end of the year. And in addition to that, 2 to 3 billion people in 7, 2 to 3 person in 7 or 2 billion people globally are malnourished. They suffer from deficiency of micronutrients, 17 of them, and protein, in addition to other deficiencies. So the question is, how do we address this? So in Rio 1992, there was a global summit, environmental summit. And at that summit, the first thing we decided, the United Nations decided, was the Agenda 21. What can we achieve between 1992 and the year of the beginning of the new 21st century? We call it Agenda 21. So we began with Agenda 21 in Rio 1992, and then we evolved into Millennium Development Goals that started in 2000, and we continued in 2015. And in 2015, we have started Sustainable Development Goals. And we will probably continue this evolutionary process. But the dilemma is that neither the Millennium Development Goals nor the Sustainable Development Goals are on the track of accomplishment. They have been specifically affected adversely by the COVID-19 disruptions. So what can be done to make sure that the Sustainable Development Goals beyond 2030 and before 2030, especially ending poverty, ending hunger, mitigating climate change, reducing land degradation neutrality, increasing human well-being, improving water resources, all those 17 Sustainable Development Goals can be met. So how do we address this issue? The Sustainable Development Goals, Millennium Development Goal, Agenda 21, all of them developed by United Nations, had 4 basic principles: peace and harmony, global peace, freedom, improved environment, and sustainable development. These were the four pillars on which United Nations started their program, which I mentioned specifically Agenda 21, Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goal. All those goals were based on this. And these goals can only be achieved. And I'm very glad that Dr. Lloyd and colleagues from IICA and others, we all agree that soil and agriculture, including that in Latin America and South America and the rest of the world, sustainable soil and agriculture management is crucial, very critical to achieving the four pillar: peace, freedom, environmental improvement, and sustainable development. And that brings me to the question of how soil health, sustainable management of soil resources can be used to keep sustainable development goal on the track. There are several goals which are directly affected by agriculture and soil management. And goal number 2, ending hunger. Goal number 13, climate adaptation and mitigation. Goal number 15, life on land. And there are some secondary impact goal in relation to soil and agriculture, like ending poverty, an important goal. Obviously, agriculture has something to do with that. Good health, because of the one health concept, that the health of environment and people and soil and natural resources are all interconnected. Clean water, obviously soil has an important role to play in clean water, and the renewable energy. So there are many of these goals that cannot be met unless soil and agriculture are integral to addressing the targets that we have established in those goals. Especially the COVID-19 really has sidetracked already the sustainable development goals. Even before COVID-19, we had a problem, but now we have even more problem because of the disruptions caused by COVID-19 in both developed and developing countries. So we have additional thing to consider, and this is where I have proposed, and we have been discussing with colleagues at Syngenta through the initiative that started by IICA, and I'm really very pleased with colleagues taking up that initiative, and hopefully that we will have a cooperative program that we can be part of the solution. Syngenta, IICA, Ohio State, our cooperators can be part of the solution in developing a strategy program to achieve the sustainable development goals. And one of these things that we would like to propose, we like to suggest to do together with Syngenta, IICA, Ohio State, and other collaborators, is a soil-centric strategy. How we make sure that the soil is fertile, productive, healthy, functional, its quality is good, so that the other inputs, such as that of improved varieties, fertilizer, pesticides, chemicals, energy-based inputs, they are effectively and efficiently utilized. And if the soil is not healthy, this cannot happen. Therefore, regenerative agriculture, RA, regenerative agriculture, which I would like to discuss more detail, is a soil-centric rather than seed-centric. We do need improved seed. What Dr. Borlaug did, short stature, improved varieties, and so forth, were very critical. But we now realize that their potential can only be realized if the soil in which they are grown is healthy, functional, and of a high quality. Therefore, soil-centric rather than a seed-centric approach is based on the truism that the health of soil, plants, animal, people, and the environment is one and indivisible. Indeed, the pandemic problem that the globe world is passing through is because the natural resources are being encroached upon by humanity. excessive and inappropriate use and degradation of the environment. So we want to improve soil health so that the cascading effect on environment and human health is positive rather than negative. So regenerative agriculture is a system that works with nature rather than against it. That's the basic concept, working with nature, working in harmony with nature, working in symbiosis with nature. And therefore, regenerative agriculture encompasses a wide range of farming, grazing practices aimed at restorative and sustainable management of soil health through sequestration of soil organic carbon. So the key components of soil health and soil organic matter content is one of the most important, it's not the only component, but the important component determinant of the soil health. So how do we manage it? So the valid question is not, is regenerative agriculture applicable? I think the more important is how to make it applicable. How to make regenerative agriculture, which is restorative of soil health, based on improving soil organic matter content, how can we make it work? And this is where the collaboration proposed between IICA Syngenta, Ohio State, with the national programs within the region where we work is very critical. This is very timely. This is very urgent, which is very essential. I think it's very auspicious that these three organizations are coming together to address that issue in the region of importance. Therefore, how can regenerative agriculture be adapted? Site-specific condition, both biophysical and socioeconomic, to produce enough food and yet be negative emission technology. It absorbs CO2 and other gases from the atmosphere, and it also advances the sustainable development goals of the United Nations. That is the crux of the program that we hope that together Syngenta, IICA, Ohio State can develop and implement. Why regenerative agriculture? Because the system-based regenerative agriculture reconciles the need to produce adequate and nutritious food with the absolute necessity of restoring the environment and making farming agriculture a solution to the environmental issue. See, what we happened before between 61 and 2019, we did make a tremendous progress in increasing productivity, but the environmental footprint caused a sticker shock. I think Lord would understand what I mean by sticker shock. But the price tag is too high. The environmental price tag of increase in productivity has been very high. The question is how to reconcile the need to keep producing more, but at the same time restore and improve the environment. And that's what we are talking about. That's what we are aiming at. That's what we need to do for the regenerative agriculture. So it's a system of farming which restores degraded and depleted soil. It reduces the environmental footprint. It enhances soil and ecosystem carbon reserves. It conserves water and nutrients. It buffers soil against extreme climate events. It improves the eco-efficiency of the inputs so that we can produce more from less. And that involves conservation agriculture, cover cropping, integrated nutrient management, complex, diverse farming systems, integration of crops with livestock and tree systems. And the idea is climate resilient agriculture, climate smart agriculture, agriculture that adapts to and mitigates to the climate change, agriculture that is less sensitive to changes in drought conditions and changes in the temperature and other environmental factors. And that is what we call sustainable intensification, or better appropriately called eco-intensification. So the green revolution that I would like to see come now in the 21st century compared to what we did before, if I may be bold enough to call the green revolution number 2, second green revolution, is soil-centric, based on soil health, based on improved natural resources. It's based on soil resilience. It's based on eco-efficiency. It's based on science and management-driven, knowledge-based. It's based on skills. Seed are an important component of it. Nobody should misunderstand. Seed are important, but we want to make sure the effectiveness, efficiency of the seed, potential of the improved varieties can be realized through better natural resource management. So futuristic agro-ecosystem, pedagogically, pedology means soil, must be restorative. They restore soil, not degrade soil. Agronomically, agriculturally, they must be productive. And here I'm not talking about the maximum yield. I'm talking about the optimum yield, but more productivity per unit input, more grains per unit of nitrogen added, or phosphorus added, or energy added, and that's the productive capacity. More input per unit, more production per unit input. Environmentally, it must be regenerative. Economically, of course, it has to be viable. Socially, it must be congenial. The human well-being, the drudgery of agricultural profession. If you're seeing sometime in developing countries, Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, the hoe-based agriculture, all operations manually done, lot of drudgery. Can we improve the dignity and professional respect of the social human well-being? Clinically healthy, nutrition-sensitive agriculture. The nutritional quality of the food produced. Remember, I talked about 2 billion people suffering from malnourishment, deficiency of micronutrients of protein. So our agriculture must be nutritional. And of course, laboriously, I already mentioned, it must be appealing rather than creating drudgery. And that is also leading to soil health, soil quality, soil functionality. And at the same time, it has a multi-dimensional sustainability. It also addresses the sustainable development goals and many other concepts which are discussed in terms of the environmental integrity. We must restore rather than deplete the soil, water, and natural resources. It should be based on the law of return. The law of return is whatever we remove from land must be replaced in one way or the other. Recycling, if you want to put it. We must respond wisely to what is changed, make sure that the soil resources are not degraded and depleted, water is not being polluted and abused, and the biodiversity is not being dwindled. And we must be able to predict and anticipate what can be done because of the anthropogenic changes. Remember, I said we are in the era of Anthropocene. Humans are strongly impacting the environment. How can we try to minimize and adapt to those perturbations? And one way or the other, soil quality, functionality, and health must happen. So then we come back to the question, how do you feed the world by 2050? And the easy thing is, let's make more deforestation. Let's increase area under production. My hypothesis, my suggestion is no. We have more than enough land resources already under agriculture, more than what we need, even for the future population. We are already adding a lot of fertilizers, irrigation, water, and pesticide. We must do other approach. We must reduce the waste of food. There's a tremendous waste of food. Globally, 30%. In many developing countries, perhaps as much as 50%. Every ton of food waste avoided is much better than ton of additional food produced. So let's avoid wastage. We must increase access to food by addressing poverty, inequality, political instability. Anytime there's a political instability, civil strife, there's a food security issue, even if the food is available. We must improve the distribution of the food. That's an important part. We must focus on plant-based diet as much as possible. This does not mean eliminating animal-based diet. No, a good balance, a healthy balance, a healthy balance of plant-based and animal. And we must, each one of us, take a personal responsibility of even making a small incremental change in improving agriculture and improving our personal habit. But the last part, very important, is that we must increase productivity from existing land, increase production from existing land, restore degraded lands, increase biological nitrogen fixation, protect prime agricultural land against urbanization, surface sealing, against utilization for anything for other. And somewhere we must return some land back to nature. Return some land back to nature. I'll come back to it in a moment. I think we should aim at returning at least 200 million hectares back to nature by producing more from less. We must use less land. No more deforestation anywhere, because we have already plenty of land if we use it properly. There is no reason to add more irrigation water. We do better irrigation, micro irrigation, drip irrigation, even vapor irrigation in very dry areas, improved drought-resistant varieties as well as crops, as well as management system. We must reduce inputs of fertilizer, improve the efficiency of fertilizer. And Syngenta can do tremendous with the guidance and support of IICA and our universities, can make a tremendous impact on increasing the efficiency. 30% efficiency of fertilizer in most of the developing countries can be doubled, 60%, 70%. Therefore, reduce the rate, but increase the efficiency. We can create a disease-suppressive soils by improving the health so that the pesticides do not have to be used. And per unit input of energy and per unit emission of carbon, we can produce more. So the climate, carbon, environment, fertilizer, water footprint of agriculture must be reduced. Agriculture must be made environmental friendly. That's the goal. And we can do that. Science exists. Translating into sciences where we need cooperation between scientific and private sector. That's Syngenta, IICA, Ohio State, as an example. The idea, the strategy is how to strengthen the coupled cycling of elements in nature. Coupled cycling. They do not cycle by itself. Water is very strongly coupled with carbon. Carbon is very strongly coupled with nitrogen. Nitrogen is with phosphorus. Phosphorus is sulfur. And it is this coupling which the soil degradation, inappropriate agricultural practices, and the management systems that leads to low efficiency, that leads to degradation of the environment. When you put nitrogen and there's not carbon in the soil to somehow moderate its pathways, it is leaked into the environment, either in the water by runoff or seepage water, or volatilization as N2O. So conserving carbon so that it can conserve water and effectively utilize nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur to create ecosystem services. This is the science behind it. By adding additional nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, or additional, we are masking the adverse impact of improper management on the natural ecosystems and natural resources. I have given this example before. Soil and soil carbon is like a bank account. If you want your bank account to increase, what you put into the soil by different systems, including biochar, compost, cover crops, no-till, conservation agriculture, residue management, must always be more than what you lose from the system by erosion, leaching, decomposition. This is the positive balance which we must create under site-specific condition. At many places now, throughout developing countries, including in Central America, Caribbean, part of the Andean regions, we unfortunately have the negative balance. We are losing from the system carbon, nitrogen, nutrients, and water resources, along with the soil erosion, therefore releasing the topsoil as well. The threshold level of soil organic matter content for most soil is between 2.5 to 3.5%. Organic carbon content of 1.5 to 2.0%, a double of that for organic matter content. In many cases, especially in resource poor farmers, we are somewhere about 0.5% or less. Therefore, the use efficiencies of fertilizer, pesticide, improved varieties, their effectiveness is not very good. So somewhere, if we were able to improve organic carbon content in root zone by 1 metric ton per hectare, the increase in productivity for the same level of input for corn can be 100 to 300, soybean 20 to 50, wheat. Some of the data here is from the Pampas region of several of my colleagues from Argentina who did the work there. About 20 to 70 kilogram additional wheat can be produced for the same inputs. Rice, another 10 to 50 kilograms, sorghum, millet, many root crops, cassava, yam, sweet potato, also improve their productivity by improving soil health. The fact is, in developing countries, we can increase production tremendously by improving soil organic carbon content of the soil which are depleted. So that's the objective. Rather than improving increasing inputs of fertilizer and pesticide, we should focus on improving soil health. While we are doing that at a global scale, technically, the technical potential of carbon sequestration in soil is about 2.5 gigaton. That's petagram, billion tons, 9 zeros per year from between now and 2100. If we compare for next 80 years, soil can put in about 180 gigaton petagram, vegetation about 150, which is equivalent to drawdown of atmospheric CO2 by about 150 to 160 parts per million. If we can do even half of this, 80 parts per million, and increase productivity and at the same time return some land back to nature, I think that's a great progress. I would call that a success story. I really think this is where an exemplary cooperation between science and private sector, such as Syngenta, IICA, Ohio State, can make a big difference. And I hope that difference can be implemented. Potential carbon sequestration in South America alone is about 8.5 petagram of carbon. That's and that annually can offset amount that I have calculated. Paper that I published with a colleague, Yuka Sa from Brazil, who at the moment is visiting us here in Columbus, Ohio, a very good scientist, and hopefully we can still continue cooperation with him. On a global scale, again, if we did good agriculture, here it gives you the land area under cereal production. This statistic is obsolete now. This is about 700 million hectare. Over time, by 2100, rather than increasing it, as it has been many times suggested, we need another 200 to 250 million. I think we can decrease it. We should decrease it. Similarly, fertilizer use, I mentioned 200 million tons now. It should be decreased, not increased. And yet, by improving soil health, the average cereal yield can be doubled over the next 60, 70, 80-year period. So that's the strategy, to decrease the land area, to decrease the input, and yet increase the productivity by using the best agricultural systems and save the land for nature. Save land and water for nature. From the point of view of policy, I would like to use the example of a pyramid, where the base of the pyramid is the quality of the soil and its soil carbon stock, productivity of the natural resources. And on that, the four sides of the pyramid would be food security, it would be climate change adaptation, mitigation, it would be land soil restoration, it would be biodiversity improvement. The sustainable development goals representing sides of the pyramid, and the base, which is also part of the sustainable development goal. The question is, if you build this pyramid through cooperation that we are talking about and hoping to implement, the stability of this pyramid depends on the governance. How the apex, where the four sides of the pyramid join together, they stay cemented together. And that is the governance, the political willpower, which can help us translate science into action, that can strengthen the implementation of the knowledge that we already have. I have also shared this many times before, that we do need improved variety. We must combine with the mulch farming and cover cropping complex system. We must integrate crops with trees and livestock, and we create disease suppressive soil by improving soil health, and whatever supplemental nutrients and water is needed, only as a supplemental. Hopefully the amount that is missed, they should be applied in such a way that they are mostly absorbed by plants and not leak out into the environment. We must think about cover crop always. This is a rye example of a rye, winter rye, corn planted through it. And this was a book that we published in 98. That was the cover page of that book. And a copy was given to President Bill Clinton. He gave us at that time to 10 universities in the Midwest $15 million to implement what we are talking about. Hopefully we can do that in South America. And the cover crop can be leguminous, that fixes more nitrogen. So the idea is, if you have more carbon in soil, the NPK dependence will be less. So the fertilizer formula should be CNPK rather than NPK because of the benefits that I just mentioned. Protection of the world soils, coming toward the last part of my talk, has three options: stewardship, economic incentive, and a legal approach. Those three, and there are pros and cons of each. Stewardship is very simple, that you teach the public that they should cherish whatever the natural resources can produce, fruits, vegetables, water, everything produced, we should cherish and respect it. And we should be thinking about even compensating farmers to pay the price for doing good agriculture. And that is the payment for ecosystem services. I have come up with a price of about $40 per hectare. It may be more, it may be less, depending upon where that is. And I calculated this price of compensating farmer in 2013. So the prices change over time. The second is the legal option. Third one. This first, stewardship. Second, the payment. The third, the legal option. Soil is a living entity. So soil also has rights. Rights to be protected, restored, and thrive and managed properly. And I have strongly made suggestion that in the US, we have an Air Quality Act, we have a Water Quality Act. Hopefully soon, one of the Farm Bill, we will have Soil Health Act or Soil Quality Act. And I think that is something which is very much in accord with what other countries should also do. Lastly, I'd like to say that agriculture has a very bright future. Agriculture future is indeed very bright. More change will happen now and 2050 than it has been last 10 to 12,000 years. And those changes are going to be positive. The 5 to 700 million small landholders, the 40 to 50 million probably in Latin America also, they can play and they should play a major role, and we should support them, provide scientific knowledge so that they can create a revolution in agriculture. Urban farming, urbanization is happening very rapidly. Uh, Three-dimensional vertical glass building in which the water from urban waste can be recycled, and urban waste can be recycled after hygienic treatment to produce food within the city, especially during the pandemic era which we are suffering now. So we can increase and strengthen local production system. And we must adopt sustainable agriculture, artificial intelligence, robot, precision agriculture, use agriculture drones to alleviate human drudgery, enhance human well-being, improve respectability of agriculture profession, and conserve and spare land for nature. I cannot emphasize that part more. Conserve and spare land for nature. We should, under no circumstances, take more land from forest, savanna, and natural ecosystem, wetland, to agriculture. And that is on which my last message, last slide, the world peace depends. Remember, 4 pillars: peace, harmony, sustainable development, environment, that United Nations has been proposing. I strongly believe that degrading land, denuding landscape, recurring drought, intensifying heat waves, low crop yield, perpetual hunger, marginal living, and desperateness are bigger threat to global peace and security, and those must be effectively addressed. And this is where I honestly, sincerely believe private organization, private sector such as Syngenta, and cooperative organizations such as IICA, scientific institution such as Ohio State, have a major role to play in bringing about the peace and stability by providing food and nutrition to humanity and restoring the environment. Thank you so much. I hope there'll be time for some question.